Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started here real quick. As you know, according to our flyer, Matt is our guest. He's running a little late because he was double booked today. But we're just, we're going to kind of go ahead and get started anyway. Well, thank you for everybody's attention to this meeting. The reason why we did this is, and I want to make sure, just some housekeeping thing, we want to make sure it gets out of the way. We know the season that we're in right now, so I'm running for city council. We know that my opponent Renee Bowles also running for city council. There's two other of us that are running for city council. Whether you believe it or not, I wasn't really concerned about political points on this as much as I'm really, thinking about, hey, look, our ward is kind of, there are certain things that it just seems like it's just getting away from us. We're not addressing it. There are residents that address Renee. She'll bring it to the city. They address me. I'll bring it to the city. They'll address, some of our other opponents. They'll bring, whatever. But collectively, as a ward, as a city, I've seen some of the other wards. I try to go as much as I can to Tom Bond's community relation meetings, and they've been very informative. Jason Blake, he started a community relation meeting way back. He was working with Jason. He wasn't even on council when he did it. When I first moved to Garfield, 2008, I forgot what it was called, Block Watch, precinct meetings, whatever it was. Frank Wagner was running them, right there right at City Hall. So I kind of got involved and I wanted to see what was going on. And I have to admit, since Matt moved up to mayor, no one picked up the torch and no one was doing it. And I guess to me, I think that's I think it's a rebuke to all of us. I mean, whether we're running or not, I take the blame for waiting this long and trying to get started. Because in the meantime, things are happening. You understand what I'm saying? Things are happening. We're all complaining about stuff or whatever, but who's actually taking up the torch to address or at least get these concerns to the proper authorities? We do the best we can, right now in this period. You as citizens of the ward, you're going to vote for whoever you think is the best one to continue, doing that. I'm not here to try and put a plug in, not tonight. I'll worry about that tomorrow. But tonight, I'm not trying to put in a plug for myself, but tonight we're talking about our ward. We're talking about stuff that's going on. And so we want to kind of hear from you guys. While we have our two councilmen available, I wanted to ask them if they would say one or two things to us, because the beauty about the community awareness meetings, it's a whole different vibe from the council meeting. We're here, our council doing all the talking, and we only get that little small window of 5 minutes to say whatever it is you want to say, and you can only speak once. Here in this environment, the resident actually has the opportunity to say what's on their mind, what they're feeling, whatever that concern is. And then whoever is standing up here has to hear it, take it in, and do whatever with that information. So, but still, since we have our councilman here, and I want to thank you both, Tom, and also Mr. Johnson, I want to thank you both for being here, Avery Johnson for Ward 4, Tom for Ward 7. There is something that it was posted on social media, which is another beast by itself. And I wanted you guys to kind of talk about that if you would, since you're here. And that's the thing about, Lord, what was it right there on my mind? What's that? Not the part.
Yes.
Anna Nucci. What's going on with Anna Nucci? You know, someone complained about Anna Nucci getting paid. Are we ever going to get paid? Now, the one thing I'm aware of is that 80% of the money, I think, is has been collected, or is where the city only has to pay 20% of it, but it's only slated to be worked on in 2024. So there's that. And I'm trying to get it to come back to me. The
average pay fund.
yes, that's it. Ordinance 60-2021. Can you guys speak on that, please?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does anybody understand what the average pay fund is? Any questions on the average pay fund? Okay, the average pay fund was established back in the 70s. And it was a way of funding the police and the fire department. And what we do is we take 5 neighboring suburbs that all touch Cleveland, that have a population around ours. Now, when this fund was established, Frank, you might be able to help me. We were at what, 40,000, maybe 38,000, 40,000? Yeah, about what?
42,000.
About 42,000 people. Along came 480, which took out, as many old timers remember, a couple hundred homes, right? And we lost a lot of population. Also, families were no longer having 6, 7 kids like they do today. You know, it's much smaller. So our population has gone down to about 28,000. All right. So what we do is we take the average of 5 suburbs. Now, East Cleveland has always been in our mix. They touch Cleveland. They were always around the same size. They have fallen between 10,000 and 15,000 people. Okay, so we wanted to keep them in the mix. We've got Shaker Heights, Maple Heights, East Cleveland. Can't remember the other 2. But to keep them in the mix, we had to lower the population of the community that's in this calculation. So that's all we're doing. If we didn't, we would see a great increase in our taxes in the next 2 to 3 years, because it would be based on another size suburb. Probably we would have to be using suburbs like, I'm trying to think on the west side that touch Cleveland, Brooklyn, Carmel, Lakewood, all those. So we've got Shaker Heights, East Cleveland, we go by, we use that as our mixture. And this is what funds our police and our fire departments. So all we're doing is allowing East Cleveland to stay in with us by lowering the population. And we're actually doing it so that all of us don't have a greater tax increase in the years to come. So that's going to be on the ballot. Any questions on that?
Well, it sounds like if this passes, it's going to stabilize our taxes and not increase taxes.
Correct.
If it doesn't pass, the likelihood of a tax increase is more likely.
I've heard anywhere from 6 to 7%.
I see.
So
So this
that's
isn't
why
something that needs to be politicized.
Right.
It needs to be something that needs to be explained.
it needs to be explained, and we're doing it to keep the tax rate down, not to increase. Debbie,
That's county, right?
what do you mean?
The county tax, is that gonna be a property tax?
No, that's a property tax for the city of Garfield Heights.
So it goes on our county property.
Right, you're right, and you're right, right.
Okay, so then it is a county responsibility of raising our taxes.
Well, they would be the one, the billing agent,
Okay,
okay?
and
So,
all the other cities will be affected by this too?
No, just us.
Just us.
Because back in the 70s, they drew this up. And there's a lot of communities that wish they had the average pay fund. Because if we don't do it, because this is the way our charter is set up to do it this way, if we didn't do this, then every 2 years or 3 or 4 years, we would have the police and firemen going out asking for increases. You know, like you'll see in other cities, you know, police increase, fire increase, EMS increase. And then this way, there is none of that politicalized. Yes,
So the reason this whole thing is brought itself about was back in the 70s, the union contracts for the police and fire were up for review. And I think it was the Stackwitz administration, and they couldn't come to terms with the police and fire, and the police went out on strike in Garfield Heights. So then the police got together and they did a city charter amendment to create the average pay fund, which there's no reason to have to negotiate the
contract
salary
of the
in
contract.
the contract anymore. Because you take an average of those communities that are part of the average pay fund, and what those police departments are being paid, our police get paid a percentage. And it's an automatic increase, then they don't have to negotiate the salary with the city. There's no strikes that are gonna be involved, and we haven't had a police and fire strike since.
Right,
So that's how it all came about, because there was a police strike. And the police actually did a referendum, the police and fire, and put this issue on the ballot. So it's controlled by the voters of the city, not the council, not the mayor, but the voters. So that's why you're gonna see it on the ballot in November.
And it's important. I'm sorry.
So I was just gonna ask, so what, is it an issue or what is it gonna be called?
It's gonna be an issue. The Board of Elections, my understanding, they have not put an issue number on it yet.
and we should
So
be
we'll
getting that
be-
notification in a few weeks.
And
Yeah,
we're voting to keep this, is that what? we're
yes,
voting?
that's what we want to do, is to keep it, not to change it. So you can do, no, I believe the wording is going to be vote yes, to keep it this way.
And because if it doesn't pass, then
We're gonna have higher income in cities, and it's gonna affect the cost by 6 to 7% is what we're hearing.
Yeah, say for instance, if it doesn't pass, okay, and then we have to go out and negotiate with the police and fire, and they negotiate a 15% increase in their wages, 5%, whatever it might be, all right, there's no way to pay for it.
Right,
It has to come out of the general fund, so we have to cut services somewhere else. If it's in place, there's no negotiation. If the average police fund says the police department and fire department gets a 4% increase, it's no negotiations, they get a 4% increase. And then the property taxes are increased a small increment to pay for that.
now,
And it's been that way since 1977. That's how you haven't seen a strike. The city fathers don't have to come to the residents for additional money. They don't have to cut senior programs. They don't have to cut youth programs. The money comes in automatically to pay for that.
and that's why I thought it was very important to really hear that issue, this issue explained from those who are actually involved, the council, because we're recklessly talking about it on social media, and you have no idea, if you're not in the room actually having these resolutions and ordinances presented to you, and you on social media recklessly talking about, oh, we're gonna raise our tax to 6 to 7%. I think it is. You don't even know what you're talking about. And so, I guess I'm just kind of passionate about all the drama that's going on in the city. It's enough of it. We're coming out of fiscal emergency. We look real good right now. We're starting to do some things. We got industry coming into the city. We really got to build on that. And not only are we looking at I guess you could say, the money situation looks pretty good. Now we got to look at the other things in the city
some of our social
match that.
programs, stuff like that.
All right, social programs, but not only that, but like our neighborhoods. I mean,
Right,
you know, I'm still hearing from residents who have issues with grass out of control. You know, and then we got some other, you know, neighbors who, you don't like this neighbor, so you call police on that neighbor, and that neighbor know that you called the police on. There's just so much drama that we shouldn't have to deal with. And so I kind of think that's what kind of the timing, I guess, is, you can say whatever you want about the timing, but that's kind of where I kind of felt like, you know what, it's actually time to kind of bring the community together, and let's just talk, and let's just, you know, try and put some of these issues on the table. You know, what is your issue? What is your concern? What are you saying, you know, in your neighborhood? How do you feel? You know, yada, yada, yada. At least here, you don't have to stand up, I'm such and such at such and such address, you know, whatever. No one knows your name if they don't already know you, and you can just say whatever's on your mind. So, but this really was very important to, you know, so you can understand why this issue is coming up and how it's gonna affect us down the line. So,
Is there a group that's going to fund the pushing of this issue, signs, newspaper ads? I mean,
the mayor is talking about sending out notifications about this,
okay.
you know,
Perfect.
so that people will be, we're talking about the average pay fund. Oh, okay, before I let the mayor take over, I'm just letting everybody know, if you don't mind, a little commercial break here.
go ahead.
Next Tuesday night, Ward 7 will be having their yearly barbecue. Everybody is welcome. We meet up at St. Monica's. My ward meetings are open to everybody. They are not just for the Ward 7. We talk about a lot of things. But this get together next Tuesday will basically be fellowship, good food. We're gonna throw some burgers, some hot dogs on the grill. Come on up and join us, meet your neighbors. And as things start to talk, you'll find out that the issues in Ward 7 are very similar to what's going on in 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. So, you know, please, by all means, feel free to join us. All right, Mayor Burke.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I had a virtual forum meeting. It's good to see everybody here at the community awareness meeting. It's near and dear to my heart because I started this meeting probably 2013, 2014, around there. And I'm glad that Cliff and some other people have tried to keep it going, and last year without meetings too, kind of felt like maybe it was going to fall by the wayside. So I'm glad that somebody picked up the ball, decided to run with it. So the average pay fund, you're talking about the other night, somebody put out some kind of rumor that I was raising taxes 6 to 7%. I think was that accurate, or did they say 16 to 17%?
It was 6 to 7.
6 to 7. Well, first of all, I think everybody that is experienced in government knows the mayor can't raise your taxes. And that's all done either through council or through the county. But the mayor doesn't have power to raise your taxes. So that's false. But I think where they were getting at that information was because we have this thing called the average pay fund. It's been around since, I want to say 1973. 77. I know it was in the 70s. And what that really does is it gives the safety forces a pay raise based upon what the average of all the communities around us give their officers. Now, what's the difference? You go to some of the other communities, such as Shaker Heights, let's say, their officers have to put a safety levy on the ballot, go in campaign, all that, and hopefully get that passed through the voters. Years ago, Garfield Heights city residents established the average pay fund which basically lets us take the average of all the communities that touch the city of Cleveland within a certain residential requirement. So previously, we were at 15,000 residents was the minimum of a city that could be part of the average pay. And so what's happened is with the census coming out this year, there were some communities, their residential requirement dropped, and it dropped dramatically. You take somebody like East Cleveland, who was previously at about 18,000 residents, are now at about 13,000 residents. Garfield Heights grew about 1,000 residents. But because of that, what happens is it changes the structure, and some of these communities will drop out, and that could affect the average pay fund. The average pay fund is a built-in raise of all of our police officers and firefighters. That raise is directly reflected upon the taxes. It gets passed right on to the residents for taxes. So by dropping this ordinance that we have, by dropping it down to 10,000 residents, a minimum requirement, it keeps some of those other communities in there, which keep it fair. Now, I like the police. To me, I'd like to see them get any kind of raise, which they do. They'll automatically get a raise. But it's a difference of how much of a raise they get. That's not my call. That is not the call of council. That is strictly run by the average pay fund. So council and myself introduced some legislation. I introduced it. And it's funny because I've been also told I never introduced any legislation. We wouldn't have a community communications technologies committee if it wasn't for that. But it gives you, the voters, the right to vote on a measure which helps determine how much the police will get a raise. So if you want to keep it fair, which is where most of the communities give their officers about 2 to 3% raise every year. When they do that, our officers get that. If you decide to vote against that measure, it's going to give them, we calculate anywhere between a 6 to 7% pay raise. What does that really mean to you, the voter, or you, the taxpayer? It could be a difference of $10 a year or $50. That's really what it is. But it's not 6 to 7% overall. It's just a difference of about 10. We try to calculate it earlier, about 10 to 40 or 50 bucks out of your property taxes. That's how much that would raise that. So it's up to you, the voter. You guys have to determine that. That's the reason why the council put it on the ballot. That's the reason why it was an emergency measure to put that on the ballot. Because if we don't vote on that, our taxes automatically go up. And then everybody wants to know, how come our taxes? Well, there it is. So that's the average pay fund. Does anybody have any questions on how that works? Yeah.
So we're voting on lowering the amount of the population in cities.
In order to keep some of the cities into that equation, how they figure that, yes. You know, otherwise, what happens is you have some of the communities move out, some other communities come in, and if you take their average, it's a lot higher than where we're currently at. And you might say, well, you know, why would you want to give the police a significant pay raise? That's not what I'm saying. And then God help us, because people put words in my mouth every day of the week. That's not what I'm saying. I would love to give them that kind of raise. In all actuality, if it went up that high, it would be about $300,000 to $350,000 more to our budget. We cannot afford $350,000. We can't absorb it, so it goes onto your taxes. And you know, you spread it out over 29,000 residents. It really doesn't seem to be that much, but it is. The problem is, do you want to pay it? And that's, you have to make that decision at the polls. And if you decide to pay it, that's fine. But our city is $55 million budget. And I used to sit in council meetings and listen to Mayor Kalova talk about how our budget is and how we don't have any money. And then I come in there and I look at that budget every single day and I say, we don't have any money. And it's because of, we don't control things like this. We don't, our residents don't look at stuff like this sometimes, or they don't understand it quite well. But to have people out there, you know, just throwing things out there that they really don't understand, just to try to get a vote, it's just, it's ridiculous. And it's not responsible, you know? I mean, as a resident, we all owe it to ourselves to be informed on what we're voting on. And we could put all kinds of meetings out there, but if we don't go and try to find out that information, we're hurting ourselves. I mean, it's up to the residents of Garfield Heights to determine how much of a raise we're gonna give our safety forces, because they're gonna get the raise no matter what. It's already built in. You know, those years that a lot of people in this room, maybe a few people know that we were in fiscal emergency. I think Joe, you know, and Avery and Frank, I know you know. Those years, Wayne, you know, you were actually on the committee, weren't you? When we were in financial difficulty and fiscal emergency. You know, did our officers take a pay cut during those times? They didn't. They got their pay raises. You know, but it's kind of crippled the city. You know, what would have happened if we didn't have the average pay fund and they had to go door to door and campaign for a safety levy? Do you think the voters back in 2010 would have approved that? Maybe not, you know, but the average pay fund is there to help protect our officers and their income. And I'm for it because you know what? You get really good officers. I mean, we have a great group of officers. They want to come to Garfield Heights because they know if they had to go back and renegotiate their union contracts, they're not going to get the pay raise that they get, and they're not going to get the benefits that they get. They have some of the best benefits that you can offer. Our police and fire are taken care of pretty good, and like I said, they get a raise no matter what. But yeah, Frank.
Talking about the police department, we recently had some police officers retire. You brought new officers in. Could you tell us about those officers you brought in?
Yeah, I've said it before, say it again, when I took over, you know, I looked at the situation is we've got a lot of safety issues. And when you sit down, I'm not a police officer. And I think I told you this, Avery, right? I'm not a police officer. So what do? You go to the experts, talk to the police officers, you talk to the chief and the former chiefs and stuff like that, and find out what do we need to do, you know? And one of the biggest issues we had was we had officers that were on the payroll, but they're not on the streets because they can bank all their vacation time and they can enter into this drop program, which I still don't really understand totally, but what I do understand is they go into this drop program and let's say they can retire in April of next year, but they announce it today and they take all their vacation time till April. They're on the payroll, but they're not on the street where we need them the most. And so as an officer entered the drop program or started to enter the drop program, you know, I looked at that, can we forecast when they're going to get into the drop program? And then we started looking for officers. And we brought officers in through lateral transfer. I remember years and years ago when Mayor Kalova started doing the lateral transfer, when he authorized it, I don't know that he really understood exactly what that meant to the city of Garfield Heights. But an officer that comes to us from lateral transfer has an experience. We don't really have to do a lot of training. So in most cases, a lot of the officers that were coming to us were minorities because of the lateral transfer. And I'll tell you, we were the first community to do it, the very first community to do it. 2 weeks ago, I sat in a meeting with Mayor Persiak, Mayor Tinley Geter at Parma, Mayor Gallagher in Brooklyn, You know what they were all talking about? Lateral transfer. So everybody's doing it today. The reality is it's gonna dry out because we don't have candidates entering into law enforcement. They're not going into becoming a fighter or a police officer. That is an initiative that Chief K and I are talking about. How do we get into the schools? How do we talk to young people about wanting to become police officers, and firefighters, and safety personnel? But the reason why we bring these guys on that are on the street now is because we anticipate the guy that's leaving. I got the police pretty much squared away. Thank God. Hopefully nobody leaves. We have created another slot for an officer. That's kind of like a safety thing for us. And I'll tell you why. Because when you have a candidate that you can get from lateral transfer, such as Officer Colton that we just brought in, Colton Kramer. He was a Maple Heights police officer, and he said, I went out of Maple Heights. And he was hoping to come to Garfield Heights. We didn't have a slot. We were full. So he was going to go to Richmond Heights. But he is somebody that we really, really want because he's good at what he does. So we went to council to try to get an ordinance passed to try to create that slot for an officer. Well, in the meantime, Officer Oblak, who was a officer we brought through lateral transfer from Mansfield, decided he wanted to go back to Mansfield. And I joke around because I say, apparently all that happens in Mansfield is they just do some cow tipping. But it's that's a dangerous place too, but he just wanted to go back home. So because of that, it opened up that spot and we were able to get Officer Kramer. Now, we still would like to get another officer because, having another one on is going to allow us to do some things, some initiatives that we're targeting. Like we want to target an enforcement unit. We want to put 4 officers to the side and have them do things like go out, and we know the hot spot is Park Heights and East 98th Street. And people are running stop signs there and speeding. We'll send those 4 over there all day long and start ticking. And then we'll do the same thing over at Bangor, and we'll do, so on and so forth, where all the hot spots are. Those officers, that'll be their job for days, until people get it to their head that they can't run stop signs and speed on our streets. But in order to really do that effectively, Chief K would like 4 officers. Currently, he's doing it with 3. And the rest of the officers just do their main job. And I'll tell you, in the last month, we've written over 365 tickets. So I think they're trying to address the issues that we're facing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So I'm kind of looking around the room and I don't see anybody that I'm used to seeing at a Ward 7 meeting. So, and I know the answer got there, but can you explain why we don't have enough speeding tickets written already?
Oh, they're again, we're talking about police. There's only 4 cars that have radar. So I'm working to get the rest of the cars equipped with radar. Chief K, he says there's about 15 cars that are in use all the time. So it's not like we got to go out and buy 25 of these things. We really only need to get about 11 more. And that's something I'll probably come to council to get. We're looking for grants. But how many times have I heard, and I know you guys have heard it too, I was sitting there, I saw a police officer sitting there parked at the side of the road, and this guy comes flying by, and he didn't do anything about it. I've seen it. Guess what? He didn't have radar in his car. He can't tell how fast that guy's going. So unless we put radar in that car, he won't have that. So that's one of my initiatives, is to try to get the radar put in all 15 cars that Chief K is asking if we can get. If that can happen, they'll do that. The other thing is, I've increased the overtime for the police to go out and write these tickets. Years ago, they used to do that on I-480. I said, well, we don't have the problem as much on I-480 as we do on some of these streets. As a matter of fact, I was on Bangor one day and, you know, I could have sworn that guy thought he was on I-480. But, and it happens. I actually had somebody that complained about speeders get a speeding ticket. So I know they're out there writing the tickets, because when that happened, I got a phone call. But it was a pleasant phone call. She said, you know, I knew that, you know, I wasn't paying attention, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with there. Now, the police chief has asked for just about everything under the sun. So he's doing his job. Brand new police chief, he wants, you know, a nice, he's showing some kind of a armored vehicle, you know. I said, what the heck do we need that for? You know, but he said, well, you know, I'm gonna ask. I don't know if I get it, but we don't have $450,000 for an armored vehicle, but you know, we can get you another dog and you know, the radar equipment you need and stuff like that. I really like his. Is there anybody here signed up on the Citizens Police Academy? Yeah, I am too. I'm very excited about that. Just preliminary things that I've heard. Shaker Heights does this and already, and it's working out great for them. So I'm interested to see what it is, especially after I found out you don't actually get tased at this thing. So, because I know if it came down to it, I'd probably get tased most of the time. So, but are there any other questions?
A question about the average pay fund.
Yeah.
So, when, Tom was, talking, like explaining it, and he was talking about the issue being on the ballot. So you said it was gonna be like yes or no, vote yes or no, but my question is about the language that's going to be used to tell people what they're voting for. Because in the past, we've had things that are very important like this on the ballot, and the wording was vote no if you agree.
Right.
Or, you know, something completely opposite of what it is, not straightforward.
That's a great point to bring up, Renee. Actually, I'll do it Tom in a minute, but I talked to Jeff Jerome today about that, because he said he could not believe the Board of Elections did not make them change the language. And he said the language specifically says that we want to drop from 15,000 to 10,000 in order to keep the average pay fund fair. You know, I haven't seen the language, but he's going to get that over to me, so you know, I'll share it with you. But he said that it was pretty cut and dry. So it's not like one of those things where if you vote yes on it, you're actually voting no on it, and vice versa. This is pretty simple language, I guess. Tom, I'll go with you here.
State legislature about 20 years ago put a stop to that. It had to be very specific, especially with tax stuff, so that you knew whether you're voting for or against, because people were being confused. So yeah, that changed about 20 years ago. So I believe the language that Jeff first showed all of us was very cut and dry, but we're still waiting to see what the Board of Elections, you know.
He told me preliminary, they have not changed.
Right, that's great.
They haven't
That's
changed.
great.
It's very simple, like the city of Garfield Heights wants to lower the minimum requirement from 15,000 to 10,000 residents. And the impact will be something like, you know, it'll impact your average pay fund. So, but the thing is, you know, it doesn't help when we have somebody out there that says, oh, they're gonna raise your taxes 7%. And it's not even a 7, even if it doesn't pass and the officers get a 7% pay increase, I think it raises the taxes maybe 3%. So it's not a huge amount, not as much as they make it seem, but it's just up to the voters to decide, which is what we need to do. We need to let the residents of Garfield Heights decide. Yeah, Avery?
I think one of the concerns that the residents have is when we see language like that, that is put out for the voters to vote on, it is so technical that they kind of miss it. So I think one of the things that came up tonight is the question is, how are we gonna educate our voters in Garfield so that they'll be made aware of the impact of their vote that we're casting?
I think the best way to do it is to these meetings, these town hall meetings, and community meetings. Put it on a website and just let them know. They can call, they can probably call the council people, they can call the mayor's office, they can call the law department to get that explanation, get the clarification. Mark, did you have something?
Well, he asked my question, but could we put an actual description in, say, the neighborhood news? I mean, there's a lot of people that don't come to these meetings, that would never know, and I didn't know anything. I've been a Garfield resident all my life about this fund.
The average pay fund?
Right, I never knew anything about it, but it makes sense why you're talking about it. But the person that doesn't have any clue what you're talking about, what are they gonna do?
There's no mistake as to why officers want to come here. Because we're, I think, the only city in Ohio, from what I understand, that have this average pay fund. So they know when they come here, they're automatically gonna get a built-in raise every couple of years, and they have the best health care. And I've already been told that if we had to go back and negotiate with the police union and eliminate the average pay fund, let's say, they're not gonna get any more of a raise than they get, and they'll probably lose on the healthcare, because that's all we can negotiate that. They would definitely then have to go out to the voters for their pay raise. And, you know, it depends on how the voters feel. I mean, there's some people that absolutely love the police, and they'll spend $50, $60 a year for the police, and some will just flat out tell you no, you know. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of both of those conversations, of those responses anyway, so. Yeah, Renee.
So going off of the idea of the neighborhood news, is this an opportunity to use some of that editorial space or whatever that they call it, to explain fully what the average pay fund is and what voting for it means, so that all the regular, non-legally speaking people in Garfield Heights will understand what it is and the significance, not just this is what's going to be on the ballot, you know, but a real explanation of it so people can understand.
And we definitely will do that. I actually have Jeff trying to put it in terms that people can relate to, because I know even when I try to explain it, it's so hard as somebody trying to explain it. I've been actually talking about it for a few years, but it's not a comfortable way to explain this, you know. It's, your taxes are gonna go up anyways, but you want them to go up this amount, or do you want to, because if the officers get paid this amount, or they get paid this amount, it doesn't matter. Whatever amount they get paid goes right into the average pay fund and right to the taxpayer. So we have to make up our minds. Do we want to keep it fair for the city and for the police, or do we want to just give them a big, you know, boost? And that's one of my worries, is people won't understand it, they vote the wrong way. And then the people that are here and trying to learn it and understand it will be the ones that lose out, because somebody just colored in a circle, you know. So, but I think the way that the language is written is, yes, if you vote yes, you're good. And most of the time people see police and they want to vote yes, you know. But it directly affects our taxes and our police. And we will definitely do that. Anybody else?
So no literature will go out with the exception of the neighborhood news is what you're
I
saying.
can send a citywide letter. I can do that. It costs about $4,000. But I can definitely do that, and I probably will in this situation, only because there's a lot of misinformation out there and people just don't understand what's going on.
So when do you anticipate that will happen? Because you're talking about
This is gonna be on
roughly
the,
3 weeks.
no, this is gonna be on the November ballot, so,
Oh, okay.
you know, and I may end up having to do it twice, because it's a very important measure. But I also want the voters to know exactly what they're voting on, you know. Years ago, and Frank can tell you this, I was a brand new council person. Mr. Wagner had a great idea about our roads. And I got, Tom Vaughn and myself got Mr. Wagner and Miracle over together to talk about some ideas. We had town hall meetings, I don't know, 4 or 5 town hall meetings. And I think there was maybe on 4 or 5 town hall meetings, half the people that are here is what attended those town hall meetings. And it's just so disheartening. So if we do have town hall meetings in this, if we do have Black Watch meetings and stuff, I need everybody to help get somebody there so they understand what's going on. You know, I mean, Frank, you remember those meetings, it was very disheartening to see. And, you know, and I was one of the new guys going, yeah, we're gonna change the world, you know, and then when you see that, it just takes a lot of wind out of your sails. So.
I mean, a good case in point today, we put out what, 1,500 flyers, Mr. Kelly,
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
for tonight's meeting.
Mhm.
But 1,500 flyers through the ward.
But you know what though, like something that we have today that we didn't have back then is that social media.
That's true.
And that,
So that they'll be able
you
to
don't know
see
how
what's
many
going
people
on.
are out there really.
Well, I can tell you right now, how many people are looking at it, and it's not 1,500. So, I mean, you know, bottom line is, you know, there are just a lot of people who we know just don't like politics, they hate politics. And then I'll have to admit that this year, this running has been the ugliest season, at least on social media, for politics. And so people just get turned off. But then there's issues like this that are so important that we actually need to hear, but people are just naturally numb to politics anyway. But then but the stuff that we just formally talked about, that turns them off too. So it's really a beast trying to inform people or help them understand, you know, what the going issues are that's really going to affect all of us. You know, taxes go up, it affects all of us. But then, you know, they'll be sitting at the gas station cussing and fussing about these taxes. Well, did you ever come to a meeting? You know, so I don't know. I know, like I said, Mr. Wagner and I, Frank, we walk these streets just on the strength of this meeting here. And I'm grateful to you all who are here, because I made up my mind. I said, look, we're not doing any political talking tonight. This is the night where I can legitimately say, I don't care who you vote for, because whether I win or not, I'm still a resident in the city. Whether Renee wins or not, we're still a resident in the city. The other two that are running, whether they win or not, we're still residents in the city. This is still our ward, regardless who wins or loses. And whoever loses, you still got to work with the person that won. You know, so that's kind of the fence that I'm on right now. And like I said, tonight was the night where, you know, pitching all the political crap out the window, you know, what my plan is for the city. Who cares about that right now? We're talking about our ward. And this issue is very important. And like I said before you came in, I kind of, you know, I felt a burden to bring this back, because no one legitimately has done anything in relation to this since you left.
Well, I mean, and we also had COVID too.
Wait, true.
But I will tell you, you know, what's incredibly hard about running this type of meeting is that, you know, when I first started, everybody was doing block watch. And I would go to block watch meetings, and you stood there or sat there and listened to you either listened to the candidate or you listened to the council person speak for like 45 minutes. Then they sold raffle tickets and they gave away a door prize. And I said, what did you really get out of this? You know? So I remember when I changed my meeting, I didn't call it a block watch, I called it a community awareness meeting. And the first meeting, I think we had like 45, 47 people show up. And there were some people that were on the social media saying, are there gonna be minutes for this meeting? And I said, no, it's a meeting for the community to come in and ask questions. You know why? Because I recognize, you know, you come to a council meeting, you gotta talk to somebody ahead of time. Then you gotta leave your address. Well, what if your neighbor doesn't wanna, what if you don't want your neighbor knowing that you're complaining about it, you know? So I wanted to provide a way for people to just come to the meeting and ask the question. Have the mayor there. I remember Mayor Cologne didn't even come to the first. He didn't even attend. He was busy. But the second meeting he came because he heard there was 40 some people. And the second meeting was 60 some people. And it started to grow. And then over the course of a couple of years or 4 or 5 years, it kind of dwindled off because it was the same thing over and over and over. And that's the challenge, is to keep this thing interesting. And how you keep it interesting, in my opinion, is you talk to everybody. Whoever they want you to bring in, that's who you try to get. The hard thing is if you don't have the attendance, you can't get speaker, you know, because he's not going to come for 4 people. And, you know, so the people will tell you exactly who they want to speak to or who they want to see. You know, it may not always be the mayor. They might want to see Armin Luch. They might want to see their county council or the county council president or Senator Sherrod Brown, and, you know, and they might just want to see the guy like Renee had a meeting last year or earlier this year about the dog, the animal guy. That was an incredible meeting. You know, it's just the things that keep people interested is what you want to have here. But you also have to have a little bit of commitment from the residents to come to, you know. The other hard thing is trying to make it on a night where everybody's available. I know when I did it, it kind of went from Monday night, the second Monday night to the third Wednesday, because it seemed like that was the day that was better. And then you'd have somebody that used to come on Mondays, I can't come on Monday anymore, or I can't come on Wednesday because I work that night. You know, and Jason Blake, then he started doing one, and we started to talk about, why don't you do yours on Monday and I'll do mine on Wednesday? And then everybody started coming to one of them, so we combined, you know, and I would love to see that if the whole city could combine and do one meeting like this. I think it'd be great, you know, because then you're gonna have excitement from the people that you're trying to get in to speak. That's that, right?
Shifting gears up on Turney Road and, what is it, Turney and Darrington, right in that area, the houses that are torn down, those 3 houses next to the Justice Center, what's going on with that? 2 or 3 houses.
There was 2 houses years ago. The city bought those houses. They were using them. The police were using them for their exercises to go in and some training exercises. Well, they're done with that now, so they tore them down. And I think we had grant money that needed to be used before a certain time. So they tore them down, but the thought process is that's going to be part of a new parking lot. The Justice Center is a big issue. I mean, I'm not going to lie, you're looking at $12 million to build a new justice system or a new justice center. 12 to 17 million dollars. It fluctuates. What we know is that the courts don't plan on coming back and having in-person court cases. They've all gone virtual, but they may have like 4 cases a year between the 2 judges that they actually will have jury trials, and they'll have to use a court. So currently, Judge Nicastro's court is really nice. Judge Weiler's court, when she's sitting there, there's a bucket, and it just literally leaks water right into this bucket right next to her. And it's hideous, and it's not something that I'm proud of as a city, you know, but to fix the roof, it's $615,000. And it's one of those roofs that when these roofs, when they design these buildings, the leak could be here, but the actual hole could be down there because the water comes in and, you know, runs down, and then, so there's no way, there's gravel on top, there's hardly any way to determine exactly where that leak is. So you either have to do the entire roof or not do anything. Or, because I'm just a simplistic guy, I'm like, why can't we just build a peak over the roof that's there, you know? And the engineers say, I don't know if we can actually do that with these buildings. So in my mind, that would be the easy fix, but.
Well, if they did that, which is now middle school, but they did that under the gymnasium, just put a gable roof on it.
Did they really?
Yeah.
But
So that's something I gotta look at.
there's 3 additions onto the Justice Center. There's the problem
Oh,
with doing something like that. I mean, we discussed this about 5 years ago. And putting a metal roof like that one is. And the problem is because of one addition upon another, it's very hard.
so the main structure wouldn't support it. you're saying?
That's what they're worried about. And that's was the things that Dave Crock and Sickle were looking at.
I asked them to look into that too, possibly doing, something on top of the roof there, but they still tell me that probably the best fix is to take the gravel and actually redo the entire roof, even though it's $615,000. And the good news for us is that it looks like we can use a lot of that cost can be absorbed into our CARES Act and American Rescue Plan funds, just so you guys know, you'll probably see a special council meeting coming up to create the funding for the American Rescue Plan funds. We actually have, from what I'm reading, September 4th, we have that deadline to hit in order to claim our $2.8 million that we're getting for American Rescue Plan. Now, just because we're getting $2.8 million, then we can just go out and buy new Chevy Tahoes, American have a new car and stuff, and every councilman gets a new car. We can't do that. We have to spend it in certain categories that they require us to spend it in. What I'm very, very excited about is they added things like broadband infrastructure. Broadband is something that is a hot button throughout the state right now. It's a hot button throughout the federal system because they realized during COVID, a lot of people did not have access to the internet, not have access to broadband. So that's where a lot of funding is going. Another thing that the funding is going for is water infrastructure, water line infrastructure. That is very important. We're trying to leverage some of that money because the state federal level is starting to pump that into the economy, pumping it into the counties and stuff like that. So if we can get the counties to do more streets, a lot of times they'll only do them if we're gonna pay for, like, let's say we need the water line replaced, they'll do the water line if we pay for the paving. So because it's a water line project, we might be able to utilize some of our funds for that. Partner with the county, partner with the state. There's a $7.1 billion infrastructure program coming to the federal level. They say 55 million of it is going to be earmarked for the state of Ohio and trickle down up to us. So that's good news if we can get our hands on some of it. Yeah.
Can I ask you to switch over to what's happening down at, I can't remember the name of what they were, Highland Park, yes.
Highland Park.
So Transportation Boulevard,
Yeah.
is that still planned to be?
Let's talk about that real quick. First of all, Highland Park, if you've gone by there, and I haven't been there in about a week, but they ripped up all the asphalt all the way over to Giant Eagle. Industrial Commercial Properties has put $4.6 million into that facility, into that whole center. And I look at it and say, they just did the parking lot. I mean, that's a lot of money for parking lot. But I guess a lot of it has gone to the inside of the buildings too. Switchback, which is the company that we convinced to come here, the first one back in February, they moved in, I think about a week ago. They haven't announced it, but they've been moving their stuff in there. In October, you're gonna see Innoplast going over there by Giant Eagle. So you have the bookends, is what I call And then, so what's going in between all this stuff? Industrial commercial properties has been all quiet. Kmart, they said, well, we've got somebody interested, but we need to change the zoning. So we did the zoning thing. It's on the ballot for November for you to vote to have that change from retail to, I think it's multi-use industrial, light industrial. And they would not be asking for that if they didn't have something going into that Kmart. So they came to me probably about 2 months ago and said, Mayor, what do we gotta do to put the road in to Rockside? And of course, my thing was, I thought you never asked, you know, but reality is that's an $18 million project because that road's gotta be built a certain way. There was two plans that they had. Industrial commercial properties had two plans. One was to actually go through the landfill and up into, what is the name of that street there? Valley Lane?
Valley Lane.
But that's that's one way this way and one way this way. That's not gonna cut it. You know, so that it's gotta be a thicker road because they're gonna anticipate more trucks on it. So now, and then the other thing was it had to go over the landfill, which meant we had to break into that landfill, which nobody is in favor of right now, EPA, nobody. So it's gotta go down into Valley View a little bit, just probably for, I want to say maybe a quarter mile. So Valley View's excited because they want that road in the Rockside. I'll tell you why. They stand to get all the benefit. They have the land that can be built on, that there is no landfill. Across the road, across Rockside Road, when you come out of this, they've got all that land, you know. So I asked them if they would be kind enough to annex all their land to the city of Garfield Heights so that we can, you know, benefit from all that, since most of the road is in our community and, you know, you want us to pay for the road, that's what it's gonna take. But they're not interested in that. I know that. I knew that from the get-go. I'm just asking for more than what I think I can get. So, but in all actuality, the goal is to get that road in. We've already got industrial commercial properties, Garfield Heights, Nowaka, Jobs Ohio, Team Neo, and one other entity that is working together. Now, industrial commercial property has connections with federal legislators that can possibly grab us some federal funds. Some of those infrastructure funds we're just talking about, the $7 billion. Maybe they can get their hands on some of it. Maybe we can get some from NOAC, from ODOT, from the city of Garfield Heights, some Jobs Ohio or Team Neo. We'll put it all together and hopefully we can come up with the $18 million it's going to take. And I think Valley View will come to the table. What I'd like to see is for us to district that particular area so that we can share the payroll tax revenue amongst both cities. So right now, if it went in, we would get some payroll taxes for just that little sliver of land that we can build that's not on a landfill. And hope that maybe we can get a solar panel farm on a landfill or something that doesn't sit there forever. Meanwhile, Valley View can get a lot of businesses in new construction. But if we district it, we can combine all the revenue and then divide it equally between the two cities. And that's what I'm shooting for, because it'll help. It'll help the school system as well. You know, the school system, if you know, for years and years and years, I've heard people say, well, you know, our taxes are high because the school system, you know, puts a levy out there and we vote it in. And that's true. But if we bring industry in, half of that revenue, because the way it's structured for us, half of that revenue is split with the school system. So, you know, that gives them some revenue that they can work in with, that they may not have to come to voters and say, I need a levy, you know. It all depends on how they're running their school system. But for me, as the mayor, I'm looking at if we can bring in businesses, that solves a lot of our problems. And that's where I have to be. It solves the safety issues. It solves the services, restoring services. The very number one thing is to bring these businesses in so we can have some revenue. Any other questions on anything?
Can we go to Antonucci, because that's a complaint today.
Yeah, Antonucci's always a complaint. I think that's multi-street phase 7, which is just going out now for funding. We had the COVID year, last year set us all back. Wolf should have been done by now, but it is, like you guys got the letter, right? No,
And the
we've asked
And
for that one in South Parkway are the 2 worst streets. And I can't tell you which one is worse, because I've been on both, and I'll tell you, they're equally as bad. But I asked, and Fabrici is the one who's doing the work, so I asked them, hey, can you just start with these 2? And that's what they agreed to do. We'll see what happens. But Antonucci, the funding, we did not get, just so you know, we did not get the grant funding for multi-street phase 5. We had to go somewhere else to get that. And the same thing will happen with phase 6. I'm sure we're putting in for it, but who knows if we'll have it. And then right now, we're applying for funding for phase 7. So hopefully we'll get that. But Antonucci needs to be done, especially if you ride a bicycle like I do. You don't want to ride. Just going down the sidewalk was nice, but then when you have to cross that road to get down to transportation, forget it. You're going to see a chiropractor after that.
Let's see our bottom road done.
Yeah, well, that's good news for you.
What's that?
That's also multi-street phase 7 coming up. So I just seen that. Jim was showing me all the streets. A lot of this too, if you guys want to call and talk to Jim Sickles, he'll tell you what streets are on it, Let me talk about how they assess the streets, because I've seen that too, where like Shady Oak, it's bad. But underneath, it's not as bad as the next street over, which isn't bad on top, but the water line is bad. So when the county assesses the streets to be done, they look at it and go, well, we don't want to tear off Pink Street because we're going to replace the water line. So let's replace the water line over here, and then come back next year and do this one, because maybe there's more wear and tear on that street, and it'll make more sense. I don't know what their rationale is, but it makes sense to me that you don't want to have a freshly paved street, and then they go in and have to tear it back up to replace the water lines, which are bad. So they assess it by looking at what's underneath first, and then what's on top. Did they actually put? I haven't been there. It looked like it the other day. Did they put the resin on Fairlawn yet?
Not as.
Not yet.
Still loose. Still loose.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something I have to give them a call on, because I called on about a week ago. I said, hey, I thought there's a certain amount of time. Apparently there isn't. They can come in anytime, but they said before the snow flies, they're gonna get it done. So
The resident at the corner of 135th and Woodward actually has a loose pavement sign against his house by the front door. So as you're coming down, going towards Shady Oak, the sign's in his yard by his front door.
do you guys know what the process of that is? It's really a pain for all of us elected officials. They come out, they put what looks like a brand new road now. It's beautiful, it's nice and smooth, and then 3-4 months later, because it's considered chip seal, they come back and they lay all this gravel down, and you're like, what are you doing with my perfectly good road? And then they pour this resin over it. They spray this resin over it. As the gravel compresses, it puts a protective barrier on that asphalt that gets laid down. And we've known that it's lasted a lot longer. I mean, I think Bangor Road, I think, was done about a year or two after Granger Road was done. Granger was just asphalt. And now they don't get the same amount of type of traffic, I get it, but I was pretty impressed with how good Bangor has held up compared to some of the other roads. So, but it seems like every time they come and put that gravel down, we get a phone call, at least a few of them, And they warned us now, they say, hey, it's gonna happen next week, so be prepared, the phone's gonna start ringing.
Well, I know it's a bunch that kind of got piled up, well, it all, not piled, but there's a whole layer of it. I think it's Woodward and Fairlawn that kind of got pushed off to the side. I think it's all the cars just kind of bring it that way for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know what the I would think they'd put that gravel down and then they'd spray it within the next couple of days. This one has been a while, and I know when they did Oak Park, they did that one part of Oak Park. That's where, that's the street Sally Temple owns at, right, Oak Park, right? Yeah, the only reason why I know this is because Sally's husband Bruce called me and he was upset. I mean, you should have heard. And I called back there and didn't even answer. I finally talked to Sally. Sally's like, don't worry about it, he's fine now. They came and sprayed the resin. He had a hard time. He had a meltdown because he couldn't ride his motorcycle when they put the gravel down. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. You know, you should be riding that on gravel anyways, but you know, it was, but in that case, it only took a couple of days for them to come out and do that. So I don't know what the holdup is. I will tell you though, talking to Fabrizzi, talking to Burke, talking to Terrace Construction, they're all having issues finding people to work. You know, they're having issues finding drivers, they're having issues finding laborers. It's a problem that we're seeing. You know, we're seeing it everywhere too.
Can I ask about Kimball?
Yeah.
We are now, my house is now in the third week that I've had to call about picking up our trash, and we're right on Kearney.
Yeah.
They drive past us to get to the side streets.
Did you, who'd you call, Mark?
I called the office, and
Kimball's office?
yeah,
All right, I have to have Mark call them.
but I just, my question is, not specifically about me, because I can send those boys out there to get cans anytime. But for all of these people who are complaining about Kimball and their service issues, what's being done to incentivize them to do a better job?
The only thing that's been done so far is that Fred told, listen, if we don't get this together, we're going to another company next year. And we've got a 3-year contract. But if they don't hold up their contract, they're gonna pay the price. And they're probably gonna fight us in court on that. I'll tell you what, this is a 3-year contract. But, you know, I talk to other mayors, Rumpke, they're having the same issue. Waste Management, having the same issue. Mayor Blackwell asked me the other day, how is Kimball doing? Because we're thinking about switching to Kimball. I said, don't do it. You know, we're having the same issues that you're having. So I know it's a problem in their industry, but you know, the only thing I could do is to threaten them and say, listen, we want to be a partner with you, but if you can't get it together, we're gonna have to get somebody that gets it together. Now, as the year has gone by, I've heard less and less complaints. I attribute it to 2 things. Either people are sick and tired of complaining about it, or they're actually doing something. But I haven't really heard, knock on wood, a phone call in the last 3 weeks about Kimball. But Mark's iconic on them big time, because we can't have it. We just can't have it. They're picking up our neighborhoods, but now what they're doing is not picking up our trash cans. You know, we have to remind them. And they're telling us, well, we didn't know you put 12 more out there. I'm like, we told you, you know. But it is what it is. It's a real problem, and I wish I had a better answer for you, but it is what it is. And like I said, I don't think Rumpke, from what I hear, Rumpke's not any better. Parma switched to Rumpke and they're having problems.
There was a thing on the national news a couple weeks ago. It's a national crisis for these companies.
Well, yeah, but you know, here's the thing. If you pay people more, right, they'll come to work. But then I think that's part of what the focus is right now. It's like, oh yeah, okay, if they go on unemployment, they get all this much for unemployment, but you know, that's always been an issue in any business. But if you go and pay people more, now the incentive there is you can't really, like in our case, you know, they got a 3-year contract, so they can't come and raise it now. You know, And I think I was on a pretty good end of that contract, considering it started out at a $765,000 increase. And I told him, you gotta be out of your damn mind, if you're gonna pay that much. And the last hour, they came through with something that was enough that we could absorb it. Because I didn't pass it on to the residents. The city absorbed the $260-some thousand that it cost. But they came down over $500,000 to keep our business this year. And then all of a sudden, all this happens, you know. And it's just, they don't want to be like that either. I mean, their foremen are out there driving the trucks. They got their managers driving the trucks because they can't find people to drive these trucks. No, we just now hired 2 people for our senior center to drive the senior van, and you did not need to have a CDL for that. You know, but the jobs were posted, and I don't know why, but nobody wants to work. None of the younger people seem to want to do that job. So, anything else?
Well, since we're talking about trash, who's responsible for the trash in the different, like, business plazas, like where Mark's is or Dave's, those types of things?
Usually the business owners. And what's worked really well for me is if you send me the email with a picture, I send it right to, you know, I think Tom gets them sometimes for me from a gentleman who complains about that area at Garfield Commons, where it's like where PetSmart is, and Sam Soaps. Everything just seems to funnel into that little area. And a guy takes a picture of it periodically, sends it to me. I forward it to that business or those businesses, tell them what, you know, we gotta do something about it. I know Mark Morrow, I've had him go out and actually ask people, okay, look, you know, you gotta clean this up. And you know, the funny thing is, if we ask them to do it, you know, but half of that battle is no, so.
Now, is that the same? Will we contact Mark Morrow also about the businesses along Turney, you know, little side streets, about the parking lot, where the barber shops is, you know?
I will tell you this, and it's always been my experience as a councilman too. If you could send a picture via email to Mark Morrow, I used to copy in Vic Pullover, you can copy me in. I guarantee you, first of all, Mark doesn't have the time to go out and look at it. But at least he can take that email, send it over to his administrative assistant or to Karen, who also works with Noreen Kuban. Get the contact people from that business and send it to them and say, you have to pick this up or else we're gonna send you a letter, or we're gonna get cited and things like that. And they'll do it. But half the battle is just getting it to them. And Mark is the only guy who is the only certified building inspector or certified electrical inspector that we have. We have one other guy who's a building inspector, and that's it. We got, you know, a gentleman who was our building property maintenance inspector. He is on medical leave. He had a medical condition. So we're waiting for him to get cleared to come back. And I just made our only other property maintenance inspector that was part-time. I asked him if he can come on full-time, and he's agreed to do it. But that's it. That's all we have, you know. So we have to use technology to our favor, to our advantage. And that's how I always did it. You know, how many times, Debbie, did you send me a picture? I moved it on to Janice.
Since 2016.
I'm not gonna be honest with you. We don't always get the answers we want. So, yeah, it's the same house since 2016, right? Most of it. But, you know, every once in a while we win one, but with the businesses, I've noticed that they will actually pick it up. There's only been the one. Hey, I know, Avery, I've seen you on Facebook with that one.
Yeah, over between.
Yeah. Have they done anything with that?
Yes, they cleaned it up. Matter of fact,
But what about the wires? Remember you were talking about the wires?
Oh, the wires at CBS,
Yeah.
for instance, was exposed in the CBS parking lot there at Turney and Granger. And I went and talked with management, and management promised me that they were gonna come back and they were gonna fix it. They didn't do it, so I went back in and asked them again, and very strongly worded way that if you don't do this, then I will turn it over to our building department and, you're possibly gonna be cited. They came out the next following day, taped up the wire inside of that, light pole inside of the parking lot. And as of today, they had a company come in and they actually sealed that light pole. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of.
Yeah, you just have to be thorn in their side sometimes, but for the most part, I've seen, I'm dealing with one right now, but here's the other thing. I just got this today. Somebody called and reported a business, and he emailed me about a business. So I responded back, can you give me a picture? And they haven't responded back, but I drove over by that business and everything they're complaining about is not there. I don't see it, you know? And that's rough when you don't see it. You can't really complain to the business about it. It's just like a homeowner, you know, I had people that said, well, there's a house over here, you gotta come see it. Mike Leffel went there, he's one of the building inspectors. He didn't even get out of his car. I said, well, let me see if I can get Mark Morrow out there. Mark Morrow goes out there. He comes back, he says, I don't see any building code violations. They called me again, complaining. Jen Duber, my assistant, decided she was gonna go out there and look at it. She came back, she says, Mayor, I don't see any building code violations either. I mean, I don't see what they're talking about. Well, now, Mark and I went to lunch the one day. I said, let's swing by this house. And that, you know, Mark doesn't ask me to lunch anymore, because last time it was that house, and the time before, well, last time it was a tree over here on East 115th, and the time before that was that house. He doesn't ask me to lunch that much anymore, but we stopped at this house. I got out of the car physically. I walked over, knocked on the door, introduced myself. We went and looked at the backyard, and this is in your ward over there. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the house. But if you stood there at the street and you looked at all the houses, you have a beautiful white house, a beautiful brown house, a beautiful blue house, and you got this color that you just don't understand. It looked like they got every gallon of paint that was mismixed and mixed them all together and painted this house. And it just does not look good, but it's not a violation of a building code. And you wish you could say, hey, take a look at all this, and this is why they complain about your house. But unfortunately, that house is not a homeowner, it's a renter that rents that house, so she has no say-so in it. And believe you me, she said, I want to pay the thing myself, I just can't afford it, you know? But the landlord, that's exactly what he did. We just probably got the worst looking paint he could find. It was cheap to put it up there. But that's what happens, you know? And the neighbors get upset because our building department isn't doing it. Well, they can't. By law, they can't come and cite you for nothing. They have to have something. And I hear that a lot about our building department. And every time, I can honestly say, every time that I've actually got involved, they don't have the information that they're asking. The people haven't given them the information that they're asking. And we got one coming up. It's going to be at a planning meeting. They did not fill out their application all the way, and they keep hounding and hounding. And Mark says, all right, I'm just going to send them to planning and let the planning commission look at it. Let the residents on the planning commission look at that and say, you know what? You got an application that's, you know, incomplete. We can't deal with this. You got to make it complete, which is what they've been told over and over, you know, but that's the only thing you can do, you know. Yeah, but
I have a question. When I go to work every day, town hall, I get on 480 at Granger Road, and there's a sign that says that Trinity High School is litter, whatever, on highway. They're supporting, I don't know, do they clean it? Do they pay money? Because it's a pig pen over there.
yeah, they probably entered into ODOT. ODOT actually, I think, had a program where you can sponsor a section of the road.
Right.
They probably sponsored it.
So they just pay it.
Well, they're supposed to go and clean that section of the road.
Physically, they are
Physically,
supposed to.
I have a couple residents told me there
Because I think by my school, we sponsor a big section off the West 44th, and the parents were picking up the bottles, like, you know.
Yeah, I don't ever see anybody out there picking it up, but that, I think that's what we're, that's.
I mean, it could be like March. One day I went there, it was spotless over in that corner. And 2 days later, I'm like, oh my God, you know, somebody's receipt blows away and this blows away and it all ends up in that one spot.
I get
And
the
I-
pleasure.
I think they only do it periodically, and the only reason why I say that is because, and the only reason why I know that, I'll say, is because the one time they did it, my son was the one photographed in it. He was one of the kids in it. And I'm like, CJ, why didn't you tell us that this is something that you was doing? He's like, you know, it was like, it was no big deal to him. But the point is, I never would have known it had I not seen him photographed in it. And I didn't know that, I didn't know that Trinity had, you know, had sponsored cleaning that, you know, that one little section up. So, but again, I think they just do it periodically. So,
I'm pretty sure my school, they would do it periodically too, off the highway at 90.
I get the pleasure of sitting there looking at it every day. It's just right across the street from my house, that whole side there. During COVID, me and a buddy of mine actually tried to go up there. They told us not to, because it's a safety hazard for us to go there. You know, we were going to climb the fence, clean along the freeway. It got so bad, and nobody was doing anything.
Right.
Incidentally, has anybody heard anything about the I-480 Ranger Road exit? What there's some talk about what they're doing there. That's right, Ward 6. Tom, you know about it, but it actually is going to impact the whole city of Garfield Heights, but it impacts Ward 6 and Ward 5 a little bit. There's been talks for over 30 years, I'm told, that they want to make that interchange a full interchange. And just recently, now it looks to me like they got the funding for what they call right-of-way transition. So they're gonna have public engagement meetings. And I just would ask anybody who lives in the area to attend this meeting. I'll personally be going out and talking to the residents around my house, because it's gonna really impact me and all of my neighbors. Right across from my house, they're talking about putting an I-480 eastbound ramp. Currently, there is not an eastbound ramp. You've got to either go up to transportation or go down the road. On the other side of the freeway, they're going to have a westbound exit. So currently, if you're coming up Ranger this way, you go around on this roundabout and get on the I-480 west. That's going to be changed to an off ramp, and then the street that coming up side of Trinity here is going to be turned into a new westbound ramp that goes on to I-480. So it's going to be a complete full interchange. It could take 5 years, it could take 7 years, but they're saying that right now, the way the conditions are, all the stars are aligning. You know, they're getting the federal funding, the state funding. It could go into making this a reality within the next 5 to 7 years.
Cleveland Clinic funding.
Cleveland Clinic is the one that's pushing it the most for 2 reasons. Number one, it's going to be safe, because coming up McCracken from Broadway, if you get stuck by the railroad track in a rescue squad, it could cost somebody their life. Now the plan is to go right onto I-480, get off of Granger Road, and go right to Marymount, which would be huge safety wise. It's also going to create a lot of jobs if that happens. Only because, I believe this, Garfield Heights will then have 3 full interchanges. The only other community around us that has that is Avon. You look at what's being built out there, or what has been built out there, that could happen here in Garfield Heights. But I really think if that happens, you're going to start to see Cleveland Clinic pick up properties all around that to have a bigger hospital. So Marymount will expand maybe. It could happen, but somebody said, don't worry about it. They've been talking about it for 30 years. It'll probably never happen. And I said, if they've been talking about it for 30 years, my luck, it'll probably happen because I live right there and it's right in front of my house and I keep down on my driveway now. So who knows what's gonna happen? But realistically, every one of my neighbors is concerned. And I'm just asking for people just to come to the meeting when they have a meeting and just offer your thoughts, listen to what they have to say. Because when they had it with Trinity had a lot of concerns about the safety of the kids and things that I guarantee you, the engineers did not look at. And they've worked through some of those, so now they're gonna do, and they haven't announced what the dates are, I'm thinking October, but they're talking about having community meetings to talk about how they're gonna do this and lay this all out. It's pretty nice rendering, but, the growth of Garfield Heights is important, and I think that helps with safety. But I know it's gonna, possibly negatively impact me and my neighbors. Like, I don't know if they'll address the whole issue of us being able to get out of our driveways, because I can tell you the rendering that I see, that ramp is literally right across from my house. So I already got people flying off the expressway. So my councilman's not here, I get to complain to him for once now. For years everybody complained to me about that, so beware. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you for having me.
All right, well, thank you for coming. All right, well, I guess that's kind of it. Look, I want to thank everybody for their interest in, just coming to the, this awareness meeting. We're gonna try and keep doing this. This is not a one-offer. It doesn't matter what happens in September, November. We're still gonna keep trying to encourage that this is done, because there's stuff happening in our community that there's stuff happening that we don't always get to hear, and it's not even addressed on council. And even if you do get a chance to talk about it, you only got 5 minutes. At least in these meetings here, we can actually continue to keep asking. Renee, you had, good questions, but we stayed, everybody had good questions, but we stayed on it and stayed on it and stayed on it until you got the answer that you wanted to hear. See what I'm saying? These meetings are necessary. So I would encourage everyone, all your neighbors and everything, that hey, we're starting to have these things again now. Once a month, it'll be toward the end of the month. Something like this, toward the end of the month, as long as we have good weather. From winter, I think I don't know how you handled that. You got when you were the councilman. What did you do during the winter?
It depends on how bad the snow was. I mean, honestly, my thought was, if I'm the only one here, I'm okay with that, because that meant, the weather was so bad, they were coming, but, I try to be here just in case that one person showed up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be honest with you, the residents of Garfield Heights are pretty smart. They're not coming to the community garden and the price all. I don't care how much you think they will, but they don't. But that's how I handle it.
All right.
And I'm working on ways too. I mean, the new website that I previewed it the other day, it's gonna be really nice, but some of the things that are gonna be able to happen is like the Ward 6 person or the Ward 5 person or whatever, they might have a section of the calendar that they put on the calendar. I'm having this community meeting, or I'm having a block watch meeting. If you are subscribed to that calendar or to the calendar, for instance, it'll send you what they call push notification. I'll send you a reminder to your phone or to your email. This is something that we have been lacking for years and years and years. And looking at this new website, I think it's wonderful what we're going to get to. I just hope I hope we can learn how to use it. I mean, it's pretty simplistic, but not everybody is into technology, so but it's easy. And it would be nice, because then you could say, I'm canceling this meeting, and it'll automatically send a push notification. due to weather, we're canceling this meeting, and it'll come right to your phone. So now if you're driving home from work and I have this meeting today, I got canceled. I know this works for a fact because when I was showing somebody it, I used Shaker and I used Berea. And so I get notification every time Berea has a planning meeting and every time Shaker has a zoning issue. I don't know how to get it off my phone. So I know when they're, and they have some meetings at 7:30 in the morning. What residents are available at 7:30 in the morning?
Seniors.
Old ones.
Yeah.
That he
Tom,
talked
I noticed
about.
Tom raised his hand.
I'm sorry for that.
True, that's true.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got refreshments in the back. Please don't leave those cookies there. And water also. And I want to thank you all for coming out. And like I said, we'll keep you abreast of when we're having our next one. I think it'll be towards the end of the month. And I guess we'll get on the ball now, trying to figure out who the guests will be for that. So that is it. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, it's just dying.
Who?
Chief K.
Oh, okay.
Don't tell him I said.
Okay.
How are you?
Good, how are you? Fine.
I'm-